Quinn Owens slammed the door of his matte black Maserati harder than he meant to, his jaw tight as he stalked away from the boardroom building like it had personally betrayed him. He tugged at his tie, loosened the knot, then yanked it off completely as he crossed the street into the park. The sun was too bright, the air too clean, and he was starving not just for food, but for something that didn't come with a contract or a quarterly report stapled to it. He hadn't expected to stop, let alone find salvation, at a food truck called Forked Magic. It sat crooked at the edge of the park, painted in wild reds and oranges, with chalkboard menus and the smell of sautéed garlic cutting through the air like a promise. The line wasn't long, just a few people, but something about it pulled him in. Maybe it was the scent. Maybe it was the woman behind the window, her arms dusted with flour, her dark curls tied up in a messy knot, and her face flushed with heat from the grill. She looked like she didn't care who was watching her. He liked it more than he should have. Next, she called, brushing her hands on her apron. Her voice was low, raspy, like she'd yelled at the world once and it had listened. Quinn stepped forward, his $1,000 shoes crunching on the gravel. "What's the best thing on the menu?" The woman tilted her head, looked him over. Her eyes lingered on his open collar, his tailored shirt, the watch that cost more than most used cars. "You don't look like you eat from trucks," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "I don't look like I'm starving either, but here we are." That earned him a half smile. "I make a grilled cheese that'll ruin you for any other food." That a threat or a promise? Depends. You want it spicy. I want it unforgettable. She met his gaze, and for a second something passed between them, quick, electric, like the spark before lightning hits. "Coming right up, moneybags." He blinked. "Sorry?" She nodded at his watch. "That thing's worth more than my truck. You look like you walked out of a Forbes article." Quinn laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "Fair enough." He stepped aside, leaned against the side of the truck, and watched her work. She moved like she was dancing, quick, efficient, total control. Her hands were steady, her eyes sharp. She didn't flinch when the oil popped or when the cheese started to bubble. He could have left after the first bite. Should have. But he didn't. When she handed him the sandwich in a paper boat, their fingers brushed. His were cool. Hers were warm and calloused. He took a bite and stopped breathing. "You okay?" she asked. He looked at her like she'd just rewritten gravity. "That's insane." "Told you." He took another bite, slower this time, savoring it. "What's your name?" "Azara." "Azara Finn." "Quinn Owens." Her eyebrows rose just slightly. "Should I know that name?" He grinned. "I kind of hope you don't." She laughed once, short and real, then wiped her hands on her apron. "Well, Quinn Owens, you survived the grilled cheese. That means you're allowed to come back." He didn't just survive it, he was already thinking about tomorrow. Quinn came back the next day, and the day after that. He never wore the same suit twice, and he never ordered the same thing twice either. Azara started to anticipate his mood before he said a word if he looked tense. She handed him her signature garlic fries before he even reached the window. If he looked tired, she made him her slow-cooked beef tacos with extra lime. On the 5th day, she asked, "You run a hedge fund or something?" He leaned on the counter. "Why do you assume I'm Wall Street?" She pointed at his shoes. "Those are custom. Fair." She waited. "I own a few companies," he said finally. "Tech mostly. Real estate. I invest." "So you're a millionaire?" He shrugged, then nodded. "Yeah." She didn't look impressed. "That why you always look like the world's ending?" That caught him off guard. "It's been a rough quarter. You ever tried smiling?" He did then, just a little. "I do when I'm here." Azara stared at him for a second too long, then looked away and flipped a burger. Quinn watched her, fascinated. She was unlike anyone he knew. She didn't care about his last name, didn't ask for favors, didn't flinch when he mentioned money. She was grounded, real. She didn't wear makeup. She had scars on her hands and grease under her nails. She was chaos in a kitchen and fire when she laughed. And he was wildly, stupidly drawn to her. One afternoon, after she handed him a fresh lemonade with mint, she leaned out the window and asked, "You ever been to a real diner?" "I've been to a lot of starred restaurants." I said diner. Not places where the forks weigh more than the food. He laughed. Then no. I'm taking you to one. You're taking me? Azara wiped her hands and tossed her apron over the hook. Truck's closed early today. Right now. Unless you've got a board meeting. He followed her to a beat-up old truck that coughed when it started. She didn't apologize for it. He didn't comment. They drove 15 minutes out of the city to a tiny neon-lit place with cracked booths and a jukebox that only played songs older than either of them. She ordered pancakes and bacon. He ordered whatever she was having. They talked. About everything. He told her about losing his dad when he was 18. About building his first company out of grief and rage and ambition. About how he didn't know how to slow down. She told him about dropping out of culinary school to take care of her mom. About inheriting the truck when her uncle died. About how she loved feeding people more than anything. They sat there until the diner closed. When he walked her back to her truck, he hesitated. Azara leaned against the door. So what now, millionaire? He stepped closer. Now I ask if I can see you again. Not just at the food truck. Not just for grilled cheese. She tilted her head, eyes soft. You're serious? I'm dead serious. Azara looked at him for a long time, then said, Okay, Quinn. Let's see if you can handle more than just spice in your food. He leaned in, kissed her slow, and tasted cinnamon sugar on her lips. And just like that, he wasn't starving anymore. Not even a little. Quinn had never been so aware of time. Days used to pass in a blur of meetings, investor calls, and flights that felt more like teleportation between cities than actual travel. But now, clock hands moved slower between each visit to forked magic. He found himself checking his watch not for deadlines or stock tickers, but to count the hours until he could see Azara again. They weren't officially dating. Not in the way his ex-girlfriends would have categorized it, with posted brunch photos and matching watches. Whatever he had with Azara didn't fit into a clean box, and that was the most magnetic part. She didn't orbit his world, he found himself crossing into hers. It wasn't long before her food truck felt more like a ritual than a novelty. Some days she barely spoke when he arrived, too focused on prepping for the lunch rush. Other times, she greeted him with a sarcastic quip about his shirt being too white to survive her cooking. He noticed the way she hummed under her breath when slicing tomatoes, and how she always added a little extra of whatever he liked without asking. She didn't need to flirt. Azara made him feel seen in a way no one had in years. One breezy Thursday, after closing the truck earlier than usual, she tossed him a set of keys as he leaned against the bumper. Catch. He did, just barely. These yours? No. They're for the community kitchen I rent on weekends. I need help carrying in some equipment. You up for it? Or are billionaires allergic to manual labor? Millionaire, he corrected, pocketing the keys. Still sounds like you don't own a wrench. Maybe not, but I know how to lift things. I even own gloves. Azara grinned, tossed her apron in the back, and slid into the passenger seat of his car without waiting for an invitation. He didn't argue. He liked that she never asked for permission to take up space. The kitchen was tucked behind an old brick building on the edge of town. Inside, it smelled faintly of soap and peppercorns. Stainless steel counters gleamed under fluorescent lights, and the space had the kind of cold, sterile hum only commercial kitchens gave off. But Azara moved through it like she'd built it with her bare hands. She hauled a heavy box from the trunk with ease. I've got a pop-up dinner next week. 5-course tasting menu. Seats sold out in 20 minutes. That's incredible. It's exhausting, she muttered, sliding the box onto a steel cart. I've been doing everything myself. Planning, prepping, sourcing. I even designed the menu cards. Why not hire a team? She paused, then looked over at him. Because I'm not interested in growing for growth's sake. I want it to stay personal. Intimate. He nodded, watching her tuck a stray curl behind her ear with her wrist. That's rare. People tell me that a lot. Usually right before they ask me to sell my recipes or scale the brand. She said it like it tasted sour. I would never ask that. I know, she said quietly. They worked side by side for the next hour. He unpacked boxes, stacked ceramic plates, and labeled jars of spice blends while she cleaned the industrial stove. At one point, she passed him a glass container labeled Midnight Rub. "What's this?" "Secret mix. Took me 3 years to get it right." He opened the lid, inhaled deeply, and blinked. "Smells like smoke and something. Sweet? Molasses powder." He looked at her, impressed. "That's genius. You say that like you didn't expect me to be. I expect you to be a lot of things. Boring isn't one of them." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she closed the lid on the container and placed it on the shelf. "You want to know something stupid? Always. I used to dream about opening a place with walls." He tilted his head. "Like a restaurant?" "Yeah, somewhere with actual chairs. Tablecloths, even. But then I realized. I like the freedom. The truck's mine. No landlords, no investors. No one telling me I'm not upscale enough." He leaned against the counter. "You don't need walls to be unforgettable." She glanced at him, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "I think I'm starting to believe that." Later that night, he walked her back to the truck. The sky had turned the color of plum, and the air buzzed with the scent of distant jasmine. She leaned against the hood, arms crossed. "Thanks for helping. Thanks for letting me. I hate asking." "You didn't. You told." She laughed, low and husky. "Right?" Quinn stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough to feel the heat of her skin. "Azara, what are we doing?" Her eyes didn't leave his. "You tell me. I'm not seeing anyone else." "Haven't since I met you." "Neither have I." "Then maybe I take you out. A real date. No food trucks. No diners. Just you and me." She hesitated. "You mean somewhere with a wine list that has words I can't pronounce?" "I mean somewhere you don't have to cook." She looked up at the sky, then back at him. "One condition." "Name it." "I get to choose your outfit." He laughed. "Deal." The following Saturday, she showed up at his penthouse lobby wearing black jeans, a deep plum blouse, and a leather jacket that looked older than both of them. In her hand, she carried a garment bag. "I swear if there's a bow tie in there, I'm canceling the reservation." "No bow tie," she said, handing it over. "Just trust me." He changed upstairs, slipping into the outfit she'd picked. A deep charcoal button-up, sleeves rolled, paired with dark slacks that somehow managed to feel more comfortable than any suit he owned. When he came back down, she whistled once. "You clean up nice, Wall Street. You're not so bad yourself, Chef Chaos." They dined at a rooftop restaurant with views of the entire skyline. String lights crisscrossed above them, and a live guitarist played something soft and slow in the corner. The food was delicate, plated like art pieces. For once, Quinn barely noticed what he was eating. Azara leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. "So, why'd you come to the truck that day?" "I was angry, frustrated after a pitch meeting. I wanted something real. And you found it in a sandwich?" "In you." She blinked, caught off guard. "That's a hell of a compliment." "It's not a compliment. It's the truth." She looked away for a moment, then back at him. "I don't get you. Why? You could be with anyone. Dating someone in your world. Someone who knows what a capital call is." "I've had that," he said. "I don't want someone who mirrors me. I want someone who challenges me." She didn't respond, but her fingers brushed his under the table. A small touch, but it felt like fireworks. When the night ended, he didn't take her home. Instead, they walked along the river, shoes clicking on the wooden boardwalk, the city pulsing behind them. At the edge of the pier, she stopped. "You sure about this, Quinn?" "About what?" "Me. Us. I come with grease and grit and a truck that breaks down twice a month. I've never been more sure of anything." She stepped into him, wrapped her arms around his waist. "Good. Because I'm starting to fall for you." He pulled her tighter. "Then fall. I'll catch you." She looked up as shining. "Just don't let go." "Never." As the wind picked up and the lights danced across the water, he kissed her again, different this time. Deeper. Certain. Neither of them saw the man watching from across the pier, phone in hand, snapping a photo that would change everything. The photo hit the morning gossip columns like a match to dry kindling. Quinn's name was printed in bold above a grainy, zoomed-in image of him and Azara wrapped in each other's arms on the pier. Her face tilted up just before he kissed her. The headline beneath was a shout. Tech millionaire Quinn Owens caught, canoodling with mystery woman not from his circle? He saw it first when his assistant dropped a stack of daily press clippings on his desk. The tabloid sat at the top, bright and uninvited. He stared at it unmoving for a long minute before flipping it face down and reaching for his phone. But Azara had already called. I saw it, she said the second he answered, her voice clipped. I didn't know anyone was watching. I swear. You don't need to explain. It's not your fault. But I don't want to be a headline, Quinn. You're not. That headline doesn't know who you are. Maybe not, but people are going to start asking. Customers. Journalists. Randoms with phones. I run a food truck, not a public relations campaign. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Azara, I can handle the press. I know you can. I'm not sure I want to be handled. He closed his eyes. Let me fix this. I don't want to fix. I want space to breathe. The line went quiet. That night, Forked Magic stayed closed. It didn't reopen the next day either. On the third morning, Quinn stood in front of the truck, parked but shuttered, a small note taped to the window in Azara's sharp handwriting, taking time. Back soon. He didn't call. Not because he didn't want to, but because he heard her loud and clear. She needed air. So instead, he poured himself into work, negotiated a major deal, flew to Seattle for a 2-day summit, signed a new development contract. But even when surrounded by high-rise views and congratulatory handshakes, he felt the absence like a hollow echo. It wasn't until a week later that he saw her again. She was standing outside a local co-op market, holding 2 brown bags and arguing with a vendor about mislabeled herbs. Her curls were longer, untied, and the tiredness around her eyes looked new. He didn't approach. He just watched from across the street until she turned, spotted him, and froze. He raised a hand. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. She walked toward him slowly, setting the bags down beside her feet once she reached him. You look like you haven't slept, she said. I haven't. I didn't mean that literally. I did. She exhaled, folding her arms. I didn't close the truck because of you. I know. But I also didn't open it because I needed to remember who I was before all this. Did you? I think I'm still figuring that out. He nodded. I never wanted to take anything from you. I know that too. I missed you. Azara looked away, her jaw tight. I just needed time to decide if I could handle being seen with someone like you. Not because of your money, but because of the spotlight that follows it. I'll protect you from that, as much as I can. You can't promise that. He took a step closer. No, but I can promise that I'll never let it change how I see you. She met his eyes, then really looked at him. You're good at words, Quinn. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Then let me be good at something else. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a menu. Her menu. The one from her pop-up dinner, printed on thick paper with gold ink. But at the bottom, in small, elegant font, was a new line. Venue sponsored by Owens Ventures. Her eyes shot up. You paid for the kitchen? I didn't touch the food. Didn't change the format. Just made sure the oven worked and the lights stayed on. Why? Because people need to taste what you create. And you shouldn't have to carry that weight alone. Azara held the menu like it was made of glass. You did this behind my back. I didn't want credit. I just wanted to make sure this city doesn't forget your name. She didn't answer. She folded the paper slowly, then tucked it into her tote bag. Come to the dinner, she said at last. Not as a sponsor, just as a guest. He didn't hesitate. I'll be there. The pop-up was held in an old converted greenhouse draped in string lights and filled with long communal tables. Azara didn't speak much during the dinner. She let her food do the talking, flavors bold and unapologetic, courses that built like movements in a symphony. Each dish told a story, and by the final bite, the room had fallen into reverent silence. Quinn sat at the far end of the table, watching his guests try to find words to describe what they'd just eaten. He didn't try. He just watched her. After the last guest left, she found him leaning against the back wall, hands in his pockets. "You stayed. I would have stayed even if the food was terrible." "Liar." He chuckled. "Fine. It was extraordinary." She stepped closer, her voice quieter now. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of losing myself in this." "In you." "You haven't." "How do you know?" "Because you're still here. And I'm still chasing you." Azara looked at him for a long moment, then reached up and touched the side of his face. "I don't want to be a footnote in your story." "You're not. You're the story." She shook her head, but he caught her hand before she could pull away. "I mean it. I've built companies, bought buildings, traveled halfway across the world to close a deal. But none of it ever made me feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I finally found something worth staying still for." Her breath hitched. "I know you're not ready to be dragged into my world. So let me come into yours." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "You're insane." "I might be. And reckless. Definitely." She leaned in, her lips brushing his. "But you're also mine." He kissed her like there was no one left in the world to impress. And for once, he didn't care if there was. The first time Azara ever stepped into Quinn's world, really stepped, it wasn't at a restaurant or a gala or some polished rooftop designed to impress. It was at a private fundraiser for a literacy nonprofit tucked inside a historic mansion overlooking the river. She only said yes because the event featured a silent auction for culinary scholarships, and Quinn had asked without any pressure in his voice, just hope. Still, she stood outside the gates for a full 5 minutes before walking in. Inside, the chandeliers glittered like frozen rain, and everyone looked like they belonged in a magazine spread. Azara didn't wear designer, she wore confidence. A midnight blue jumpsuit that hugged her just enough, and heels she'd borrowed from a friend. Her hair was down, curls wild and unapologetic. She didn't wear a single piece of jewelry. Quinn found her before she even crossed the threshold. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, because in many ways he did. His suit was dark gray, tailored within an inch of its life, his expression unreadable until his eyes landed on her and softened instantly. "You made it. You owe me a drink. Something stronger than wine." He held out his arm, and she took it without hesitation. "I'm going to warn you," he said as they walked past a couple whispering behind champagne glasses. "This crowd loves to ask questions they already think they know the answers to." "So do food critics," she said. "I'm not scared of rich people." He grinned. "You never were." She met his business partners, a few board members, even a senator's wife who complimented her shoes in a way that felt like a subtle insult. Azara returned the favor by casually mentioning the truffle oil scam that had just rocked the gourmet industry, watching the woman's face freeze. Quinn spent most of the evening watching her navigate his world like a storm that refused to apologize. She didn't try to blend in. She didn't quiet down. When someone asked if she was the new girlfriend, she replied, "No. I'm the one who makes sure he doesn't forget to eat." Halfway through the night, the auction began. Quinn leaned close. "There's an anonymous donor who pledged to match every scholarship bid tonight." She shot him a sideways glance. "Anonymous? I hear he eats a lot of grilled cheese." Azara let out a short laugh. "You're ridiculous. I'm trying to be useful." When the culinary fund crossed the 6-figure mark, she reached for his hand under the table. She didn't speak, but he felt the weight of what it meant. Her fingers were warm, steady. After the event, they slipped out through the garden doors, away from the crowd and the music. The path was lined with lanterns, and the river shimmered in the distance. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice quiet now. "I wanted to." "That's not the same." Quinn stopped walking. "I've spent years throwing money at things that didn't matter." "This matters. You matter." She turned to face him. "So what now? We keep doing this? My world, your world, back and forth like we're balancing on a wire." No, he said. We build one that's ours. Azara searched his face for doubt. She didn't find any. Then tell me something real, she said. Something you don't tell anyone. He stepped closer, the air between them still. When I sold my first company, I didn't celebrate. I sat in my apartment and stared at the check like it was written to someone else. I felt nothing. Her expression didn't change, but she reached up and touched his jaw gently. And now, he took her hand and pressed it to his chest. Now I feel everything, and it's terrifying. Good, she whispered. I don't trust people who aren't scared of love. I'm not just scared, he said. I'm all in. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of river water and spring flowers. He took a breath, reached into his jacket pocket, and held out a small black box. Azara stared at it. Quinn, I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not asking you to quit your truck. I'm asking you to let me love you for the rest of your life. She opened the box slowly. Inside sat a single-ring solitaire, elegant, classic, and unmistakably hers. Quinn didn't kneel. He didn't need to. I don't want to change you. I just want to stand beside you. Whatever shape your life takes, I want to be in it. Azara blinked, her throat tight. You're really doing this? I'm not sure I know how not to. She looked down at the ring, then up at him. Yes, she said. Yes, you ridiculous man. The moment echoed in the quiet of the garden, in the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the party. He slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit like it had always belonged there. They didn't rush. There was no sudden plan for a wedding or a splashy engagement party. Instead, they returned to their lives with something new anchoring them. Azara reopened Forked Magic with a hand-painted sign above the window that read, "Back for good." The lines were longer than ever, and her pop-up dinners became the talk of the city's underground food scene. Quinn didn't try to change her rhythm. He showed up when she needed him. He stayed away when she needed space. He bought her a new industrial oven but never brought it up again, not even when she refused to use it until she'd tested every setting herself. One crisp morning, while she was prepping for a private event in the borrowed greenhouse, she turned to find him standing at the door. You're early, she said, wiping her hands on a towel. I brought coffee. She took the cup without hesitation. You remember how I like it? I remember everything. She sipped, then looked at him over the rim. You still scared? Every day. Good. Me too. That night, as they stood under the same string lights where her pop-up had once changed everything, she leaned against him and whispered, I never expected any of this. He wrapped his arms around her and said, neither did I. I stopped for a sandwich. She laughed. And stayed for the chaos. Stayed for you. And that was how it ended, not with fanfare or flashbulbs, but with two people who had nothing in common except the one thing that mattered most. They chose each other. Every day. In every world. Always. The invitations went out on a Tuesday morning. Azara wasn't fond of ceremony, but Quinn had insisted on celebrating the launch of her new culinary studio, a sprawling industrial space she designed herself. Tucked in a renovated warehouse near the river, complete with an herb wall, a custom-built test kitchen, and walk-in fridges she'd dreamed about since she was 20. It was no longer just her food truck or the borrowed greenhouse. It was hers, built with her hands, her vision, and yes, Quinn's silent backing, but only after she demanded he keep his name off everything but the emergency contact form. The event was part launch, part private dinner, part thank you to the few people who had helped her shape the dream. There was no press allowed, she made that clear. It wasn't for headlines. It was for her. Quinn arrived late. Not fashionably. Actually late. Azara was standing near the pass-through window, plating the last round of hors d'oeuvres with her new sous chef when she heard the door open and the familiar hush that fell over people when someone important walked in. She didn't look up until she felt a hand brush lightly against her lower back. You're supposed to be here 2 hours ago, she said, not turning. I know, Quinn answered, his voice lower than usual. I had a board call that went sideways. Then I got stuck behind a street parade. I'm pretty sure there were goats. Azara turned, finally, and took him in. He looked like hell. His tie was crooked, hair windblown. and there was a smudge of something across his lapel that looked suspiciously like frosting. "Are you bleeding cake?" He looked down at his jacket and wiped at it with his thumb. "I stopped at Sweet Theory to pick up those pistachio pastries you like." The box exploded. "You brought pastries to a dinner where I'm serving a 6-course tasting menu?" He grinned at her, eyes crinkling. "I thought you'd want them for tomorrow." She stared at him for a beat, then took the crumpled box from his hand and passed it off to one of her line cooks. "You're lucky I love you. I'm counting on it." The night continued in a hum of motion and heat. The open kitchen was the centerpiece of the studio, allowing guests to watch Azara and her team move with practiced rhythm. She was in her element, calling out orders, adjusting plating, tasting sauces, and making it all look effortless. Quinn watched from the edge of the crowd, a glass of wine untouched in his hand. When the final course was served and the guests began to drift into the lounge area with coffee and tiny cookies shaped like herbs, she slipped off her apron and made her way to him. "You didn't eat," she said, brushing a streak of truffle oil off his sleeve. "I did. I just ate slow. I was watching you. That's unsettling." He leaned in. It was the opposite. She exhaled, tension finally leaving her shoulders. "I kept thinking something would go wrong. That the fridge would blow, or the duck confit would come out dry, or that the generator would fail. But none of that happened." "No," she said, glancing around the room. "It really didn't. Because you designed every inch of this place. You knew what it needed before it needed it." Azara turned to face him fully. "You know what scares me? Tell me that this is the top of the mountain. That everything from here is just downhill." He took her hand gently. "Then let's find a higher mountain. This place was built on my name, not yours. You know that, right?" "Azara," he said, his voice firm, "this place is yours. I know exactly how much you fought to make that happen. I didn't give you this. I just stood still while you built it." She stared at him, eyes searching his. "You really mean that?" "I've never meant anything more." She nodded once, then tilted her head. "And what about you? What's next for the tech empire?" "I actually stepped away from 2 boards last week." Azara blinked. "Wait, what?" "I want time. With you. With this. I've been running at full speed since I was 18. I think I've earned the right to breathe." "You're stepping back from your companies?" "Not all. Just enough. I'll still invest. Still build. But I want to be present. Not just the guy who shows up late and smells like frosting." She studied him. "That's a big shift." "So was falling in love with a woman who makes grilled cheese that tastes like redemption." Azara snorted. "You're lucky I'm too tired to throw something at you." He leaned closer. "I'm lucky. Period." The next morning, they woke up late in Quinn's penthouse, no alarms. No calls, no urgency. Azara padded barefoot into the kitchen, wearing one of his old shirts, and found him already making coffee, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a shower. "You're domestic now?" she asked, leaning against the counter. "I figured if I want to be part of your world, I should learn how to make coffee that doesn't taste like burnt regret." She accepted the mug and sipped. Still burnt, less regret. He smiled at her over the rim of his own cup. "We should take a trip." Azara raised a brow. "You mean like a vacation?" "I mean exactly that. Somewhere with no reservations. No schedules. Just you, me, and maybe a beach that doesn't have Wi-Fi. I don't know if I remember how to relax. Then we'll relearn it together." She set her mug down and walked over to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You're really serious about this new version of your life." "I'm serious about you. This life is just the bonus." They booked a flight to a quiet island off the coast of Greece, stayed in a villa with whitewashed walls and lemon trees outside the window, and spent 10 days doing nothing but swimming, cooking, and trading stories under the stars. Azara taught him how to char octopus over fire. He taught her how to play chess, though she beat him on the 3rd game and refused to play again. They didn't talk about work. Not once. Instead, they talked about what came next, not in terms of business or milestones, but in terms of living. A garden behind the studio. A small scholarship fund in her uncle's name. A dog maybe, though Azara insisted it couldn't be one of those purse-sized ones. They came back home with sunburns, new freckles, and a quiet kind of certainty. 1 year later, the culinary studio had expanded to include a second kitchen and a rooftop garden. Azara's food truck, though rarely used now, was parked in the back lot, a relic, a reminder, and sometimes still a refuge. She refused to sell it. Quinn, true to his word, had shifted into a quieter role. He still invested, still mentored, but now his mornings began with newspaper ink on his fingers, not phone calls. He shared an office in the studio's upstairs loft where he wrote, tracked ideas, and occasionally helped with accounting when Azara let him. Their life wasn't perfect. They argued over drawer space and whether chocolate belonged in chili. They got colds at the same time once and nearly burned the kitchen down trying to make tea. But every night, they ended up in the same place, tangled in each other. Laughter tucked into the sheets. The city buzzing outside and their world sealed in something sacred. They didn't rush to marry. There was no race to an altar. The ring on her finger was enough. It was never about the spectacle. It was about knowing. One evening, after a long day of recipe testing and an impromptu wine tasting gone slightly off the rails, Azara curled up beside Quinn on the leather couch in their shared loft. The windows open to the sound of the city breathing below. "I used to think success meant a restaurant with my name in lights," she said, voice low. "And now I think it's this. Building something with someone who doesn't try to change me." He kissed the crown of her head. "I never wanted anything else." They sat in silence after that, the kind that didn't need filling. Outside, the city moved. Inside, they didn't have to. They had already arrived.